The Senate will come to order. Members, please stand for the prayer. Leading us in prayer today will be our very own Senator Andrew Matthews from Senate District 15. And following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this privilege to serve in the state of Minnesota and serve our communities and districts. Give us your wisdom as we come to this final weekend. Give us the wisdom that comes from above, that is pure and peaceable and gentle and easy to be entreated and full of good fruits, without partiality and hypocrisy. Lord, give us wisdom that we may make the right decisions and wise choices for the days and weeks ahead. Pray that you'd give wisdom to our leaders, our president, our governor, and all those that you have set up in authority. We pray for those around our state, those who are still struggling, those who still have health issues. We pray that you would strengthen them. We pray that you would put your hand on those caring for them. Lord, thank you for all those who have raised up and helped out those in need in these difficult times. Bless our doctors, bless our nurses, our medical responders, our law enforcement responders, all those that are playing a crucial role in this response. Give us your wisdom, give us your grace. We ask this. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Anderson B., Anderson P., Bach, Benson, Bigham, Carlson, Chamberlain, Champion, Clausen, Cohen, Swazinski, Dames, Dibble, Draheim, Dietzig, Eaton, Eichhorn, Eakin, Franzen, Frenz, Gazelka, Goggin, Hall, Herr, Hayden, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Jasinski, Jensen, Johnson, Kent, Kiffmeyer, Klein, Coran, Lane, Lang, Latz, Limmer, Little, Marty, Matthews, Miller, Nelson, Newman, Newton, Osmak, Pappas, Pratt, Rarick, Ralph, Rest, Rosen, Rude, Senjum, Simonson, Sparks, Tomasoni, Torres, Ray, Utke, Weber, Westrom, Uyghur, Wickland.
A quorum is present. Pursuant to Rule 14.1, the following members intend to vote under Rule 40.7. Senators Anderson B., Carlson, Clausen, Dames, Dietzig, Eaton, Franzen, Frentz, Hall, Lane, Latz, Newman, Newton, Rest, Senjum, Torres Ray, and Wickland. Members will begin on the Senate agenda today with the second order of business, executive and official communications. Please make note of the communications received. They are listed in the agenda. There's no further action required on those communications. Moving to the fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the agenda be adopted.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Continuing on the agenda with the seventh order of business, second reading of House bills, the Secretary will read the House file numbers.
House File Numbers 4206 and 1842.
These House files are given their second reading. Moving to the eighth order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The Senate files listed in today's introduction calendar, which are Senate file numbers 4624 through 4628, are given their first reading and referred as indicated. We'll continue to the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. There are a few authors' motions listed in the agenda. We'll take these authors' motions as one motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. We will take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Senate Resolution number 234 and Senate Concurrent Resolution number 8 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. The Secretary will read Senate Resolution number 235.
Senators Gazelka and Kent introduce Senate Resolution 235, a Senate resolution relating to the conduct of Senate business during the interim between sessions.
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move adoption of Senate Resolution number 235.
Discussion on that motion, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, members, 235 is the customary resolution that establishes procedures of the Senate operations during the interim between regular legislative sessions. It provides authorization for hiring, committee activity, and provides authority to the Secretary of Senate to administer and supervise Senate operations during the interim. This resolution is identical to the previous resolutions adopted for this purpose.
Any discussion on that motion? Members, this does require a roll call vote. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on Senate Resolution number 235. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in the chamber, please remember to vote as well at your own desk. Members in room 303, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. And members in the President's office, please come to the chamber to vote. Members, just a reminder, enter the chamber through either the retiring room or the side chamber doors and exit through the front, please. Members in the East Gallery, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in the East Gallery, members in room 323, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber to vote. I will now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson B. votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes aye.
Senator Hall votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes aye.
Senator Rosen votes aye. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed. The resolution is passed and adopted. The Secretary will read concurrent resolution number 9.
Senators Gazelka and Kent introduce Senate concurrent resolution number 9, a Senate concurrent resolution relating to the delivery of bills to the governor after final adjournment.
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of Senate concurrent resolution number 9.
Discussion on that motion, Senator Gazelka.
Concurrent resolution number 9 is the customary resolution that establishes the procedures for presenting bills to the governor after adjournment sine die. This resolution is identical to previous resolutions adopted for this purpose.
Members, any discussion on Senate concurrent resolution number 9? This does not require a roll call, so this will be a voice vote. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. We will take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails and the resolution is adopted. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Rude.
Mr. President, I move that Senate file number 3358 be taken from the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Again, we'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Senator Rude.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate concur with the amendments by the House to Senate File 3358 and that the bill be placed on its passage as amended.
And members, please refer to House Journal dated May 14th, page 8660A. The third reading is in the Senate Journal dated April 30th on page 5813, page 5813. Discussion on that motion, Senator Rude?
Mr. President and members, this is the Save Paul Bunyan bill that we passed. It's a wonderful bill that allows 16 and 17-year-olds places and safety guidelines for them. The House amended it with Senator Hall's lawn mowing bill that passed out of this chamber unanimously. So I would appreciate your support.
Any discussion on the Rude motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. We'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. All right, members, we have Senate File 3358 in front of us. Is there any discussion on the bill before we go to third reading? The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3358, a bill for an act relating to employment providing for the minimum age for safe amusement ride operation.
Third reading. Members, any final discussion on the bill? We're on final passage of Senate File 3358. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the chamber, please vote at your desk. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 303, please make your way to the chamber to vote. And members in the President's office, please come to the chamber to vote. Yep. Members in the East Gallery, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. And members in room 323, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 206, please come to the chamber to vote. I will now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Mr. President, Senator Anderson B. votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes aye.
Senator Hall votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes aye.
Senator Rosen votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as title agreed to. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that House File numbers 2682, 4500, and 4597 be taken from the table and given a second reading.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. The Secretary will read the House file numbers for their second reading.
House File Numbers 2682, 4500, and 4597.
Second reading. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Files number 2682, 4500, and 4597 be laid on the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that House File number 4415 and 4601 be taken from the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 26, I designate that House File number 4415 and 4601 and Senate File number 15 and 4499 be made for special orders for immediate consideration.
On that motion, members will begin on the list of special orders with General Order number 79, Senate File 4499, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I know we're having some long hours, and everybody would like to move on and continue with the bills here, and I'm going to make it as quickly as I can. It's a rather short bill, short explanation, but Senate File 4499, I would first like to offer the A16 amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Ingebrigtsen offers the A16.
A16.
Senator Ingebrigtsen offers the A16 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Ingebrigtsen moves to amend Senate File number 4499 as follows. Page 2 after line 11, insert. This is the A16 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. The A16 amendment, delete all amendment, encompasses the environment policy, Senate environment policy language, as well as the LCCMR language. Not a whole lot in the bill, members, with regards to the agencies. Some of the key points: there are various provisions to increase permit time with the DNR, and the MPCA would be a highlight. Another one would be a Senator Goggin Antler Point restriction bill in there. Another one of interest is portable deer stands and WMAs. That was a Senator Johnson initiative and a Senator Root initiative with regards to salt applicator language. And of course, Senator Ruud did hear the policy part of the bill, and again, that's included in here. Also, a very interesting point, and I think members should show a huge amount of interest. In fact, there was when we had the committee hearing on this particular portion of the bill, and that was the California emission standards by Senator Matthews. That as well is included in the bill. Also included, that would be pretty much it of the Article 1. Article 2 is, members, the annual LCCMR bill. A lot of discussion going on between myself and the House over the last 2 weeks with regards to where that goes. Members, that came without the majority number of votes that we needed to actually send a message to the legislature that it was voted upon and had enough votes. It was too shy. However, the majority of the initiatives in the bill, I would have to say the majority of the folks voted for. The real issue that was not agreed upon, of course, was the same thing that was talked about last year and the year before, and that was wastewater treatment appropriation grants. And I think most of you know what that is about with regards to giving small towns under the population of 5,000 in the state of Minnesota help with fixing their wastewater treatment facilities. And the argument has always been that it's a bonding provision, and there are some senators and quite a few senators that agree that some of these dollars should be appropriated, but at this point in time, that has been removed from the bill. The $1.5 million has been removed from the bill, and it was replaced basically with several flood mitigation projects throughout the state, and also included in here of interest, and which I think is a good inclusion, is the Adopt a Dumpster initiative from Senator Bingham. Her and I have been working along with the members in the House on this chronic wasting disease, and this is something that's needed. After the first year, we realized we needed more ways of getting rid of carcasses the right and proper way. So that is included in this bill. So members, that appropriation totals a $61.387 million. And of course, that's, as you know, the LCCMR is from your scratch-offs. It's been, it was a constitutional amendment that was passed back in the 90s. So this is a similar bill that is passed every year. This has been, of course, growing along with the corpus that's sitting there. And an awful lot of money is going into the environment and environment projects, initiatives, a lot of grants, a lot of research. University of Minnesota, you can see it on the bill, it's all there. So members, with that, I certainly will ask for your support on this bill, and stand for any questions.
Members, we're on the A16 amendment. I have Senator Bingham, followed by Senator Goggin. Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Ingebrigtsen, I have one question, if you would yield on the LCCMR part.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Bingham.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, in committee, in your committee, you deleted the extension language that was in the bill. Is that in your delete all amendment? Because I haven't had a chance to run through this that was just sprung upon us.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Mr. President and Senator Bingham, thank you for that question. I'm looking down here now. I'm seeing that I'd forgotten a couple of things, actually. But yes, they are in the bill. The extensions are in the bill, like they always are. So the bill has not, changed. I know that happens with legacy funding as well, and I believe Senator Ruud did that just a couple of days ago with legacy funding. Also in the bill, if I can, Mr. President and members, a recent call from the MPCA with regards to tax, solid waste tax. Currently, recycling cans are going to the dump, and if we don't suspend the tax everyone will be getting a larger trash bill during this pandemic. Members, everybody agrees that the folks probably won't stand for paying a larger fee. And what will happen is that the recycling will actually get thrown off to the side, and all the hard work that's been going towards that will actually go away. So we've all agreed, both sides have agreed, along with the agency, that we do that. I ran that past the tax chair. That was not a problem. That's also included in the bill.
Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. I think that the LCCMR projects are extremely important, and they have a lot of potential for jobs, for research. They're science-based. You have a lot of private money that is matched to these. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss this on the floor, because I was very disappointed that it appeared as if it was an arbitrary decision to not bring that before the committee that had been a past practice, because I think it's important for every member to know the benefits of these projects and what they can do all across Minnesota. So again, I think that the LCCMR projects are very important, and that we need to continue to work together on, I think, doing a better job of working together on how these individual projects get vetted and get through the process, because I think that politics got in the way this year, and it was unfortunate, and caused a lot of consternation that probably didn't need to happen.
Mr. President.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Madam President, I'm sorry. Just a couple comments. Yes, LCCMR projects have put a lot into the environment, whether it be research, and some can argue with that, that how much research do we need? And you hear that comment going around, and occasionally we have to back up and take a look at that for sure. But Minnesotans can certainly be proud that they voted to put dollars back into the environment over and above the general fund, and that has been done. I put a figure together last year, and it was upwards of $3 billion over the last 10 years. Additional monies have gone into environmental projects throughout the state of Minnesota, and so Minnesotans do care about this stuff. There's no question about it. It's our jewel of the Midwest, and all these lakes, waters, and stream, and so thank you for those comments.
Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen, for including my antler point restriction prohibition in your bill. My district in southeastern Minnesota, we have a tremendous amount of deer in our district. They cause a lot of damage to cars, trucks, farms, crops, and I hear from farmers and landowners all the time saying, please, you've got to do something. We have so many deer, and they're just overrunning our area. But also last year we also passed you had my bill for $1.8 million in research funding to the University of Minnesota for chronic wasting disease testing. And one thing we need to do in conjunction with the testing is we need to make sure that we're managing our population of deer such that we don't get so many older deer in the herds, such that they start displaying evidence of chronic wasting disease. And so I really appreciate you putting this in the bill, and I really am a huge supporter of your bill. But I also want to make sure that with this APR prohibition that, we're preserving the history and traditions of our deer hunting that so many families partake in every year. And I think by doing this, we'll have a really good, healthy population for people to go do their deer hunting, enjoy the fruits of their labor, and enjoy the meat that they get. And I stand to support your bill. Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Madam President, thank you for those comments. As you know, I'm passionate about the whitetail hunt and the tradition in Minnesota. I've been working very hard with the sportsmen with regards to managing the deer herd as well as the deer herd as well as the DNR. And yes, we've gotten some great numbers of whitetail. In fact, I've had many emails that say they're getting to the point of almost being considered rodents. I mean, they are becoming dangerous. It's almost become a public safety issue, and you're right. I'm glad you came forward with this. The 4-point restriction was put on some years ago, as people may recall, as a test site down in the southeastern part of the state to try and grow bigger bucks. And that's what did happen. We grew bigger bucks, but I don't think we shot the ones that, that should have been shot, and now we've got an overrun of deer. And socially, that's a wonderful thing with these young kids passing up on deer. That wasn't even part of our heritage back then, but I hope that this bill passes and we take away that restriction and let people shoot the deer that they want.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Rude.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to lend my support for this bill. It has a lot of work. There is a policy provision. It's the DNR lands bill has been included in this bill. It's the technical modifications requested by the DNR, and it also has the DNR technical amendments. Not very exciting, but it's all that it helps them to clarify and implement their current policy. So those have also been included in this bill. We also have one bill that I'm really excited about. We worked on for 3 years, and so I thank Senator Ingebrigtsen for including it in the bill, and that is the Safe Salt bill. And it's really made a difference in our cities and towns and counties using less salt to go into our lakes and rivers. So I really appreciate that being included. But I really want to thank Senator Ingebrigtsen for including the LCCMR language. That is such an incredible jobs bill for the state of Minnesota, over $60 million in projects that will help us as we try to save this economy and go forward. So all these projects have been vetted through the LCCMR committee, and I really appreciate Senator Ingebrigtsen, you taking the time and the commitment to getting this done this year. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a few questions if Senator Ingebrigtsen would yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. My first question, Senator Ingebrigtsen, and I apologize if you mentioned this in your presentation of the A16, is this list of projects, these LCCMR projects, an agreed-to list of projects with our counterparts over in the other body?
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Yes, as I did explain that. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President, and Senator Dibble for the question. Yes, they were agreed upon, except for the $1.5 million that has been taken out now and actually put towards flood mitigation projects that were actually heard as well. So,
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. So that kind of foreshadows my next question. Is this the list of LCCMR projects as recommended by the LCCMR committee? And if not, which ones were eliminated and why?
Are you asking Senator Ingebrigtsen to yield?
Yes, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Yes.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, they are. I think I explained that in your first question. The only thing that isn't agreed, or that has not been, was the $1.5 million. That was not. That's where the angst came from with the Citizens Committee versus the, as well as the, I shouldn't say versus, but as well as the 8 members that are on there. Those dollars have been put towards flood mitigation projects, as well as, again, as I said earlier, the adopt the dumpster language, which is an appropriation of, I think, of $100 and some thousand. So, yes, they were talked about.
Senator Dibble?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple more questions with your indulgence. Thank
Senator
you.
Ingebrigtsen?
Senator Ingebrigtsen, if you could yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, will you yield? He will yield.
Thank you.
Senator Dibble?
Senator Ingebrigtsen, I just wanted to ask specifically if I can draw your attention to page 9, paragraph G, starting at 9.14, innovative solution for protecting Minnesota from PFAS contamination. I look down and I see it's on 9.18 for an agreement with Demcon companies. So my question, Senator Ingebrigtsen, is Demcon companies a private profit-seeking organization, a for-profit company? So that's one question. I'll ask all my questions. I have 3 questions. Have we ever, has LCMR, I know LCCMR has partnered with public entities like the University of Minnesota, the DNR, and others for pilots and initiatives and research and the like, and the like. Have we ever partnered with a for-profit entity? I just don't know. It's a sincere question. It just strikes me as curious that we're specifically...
Senator Dibble, you have that question. You want that answered, Senator
Right,
Dibble?
I'm asking a series of questions, and I have a third question, Madam President. If, in fact, there are profits or royalties, would those be shared with the state or with the LCCMR resulting from a product that this company might develop?
Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Thank you, Madam President, and Senator Dibble for the very good questions here. This has been done before, yes. It has been. There has been companies that, private companies that have helped out with this through the University of Minnesota process. That's been going on for quite some years. Actually, I think the most recent one I can think of is the University of Minnesota working with the, I think it was Toro or one of those companies with regards to robots, robotic weeders, actually. So yes, that's that has certainly been there, and I think statute covers that. And if there's anything developed that's of significant value that would stay with the state of Minnesota, I think that's just kind of a standing procedure as well as is covered under law.
Senator Dibble, did that answer your question? Senator Dibble does. Okay. Members, any further discussion? I have nobody else on my list here at the desk. So, Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Final comments, unless you want to wait till the third reading? Whichever.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We need to adopt the amendment, Senator Ingebrigtsen. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to speak anymore. Seeing no further discussion, we will take the vote on the A16 amendment to Senate File 4499. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? We will wait a few moments to hear of the votes from our other rooms. There being a sufficient number of votes, the A16 amendment is adopted to Senate File 4499. To any further discussion, Senator Bigham? Senator Bach, Senator Bigham had made the request first, so I will come to you next. Senator Bigham, to the bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to offer the A17 amendment and ask for a roll call.
Senator Bigham offers the A17 amendment. Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bigham moves to amend Senate File Number 4499 as follows, page 9, after line 25, insert. This is the A17 amendment.
Okay, Senator Bigham, I hear that roll call was requested. Roll call granted. All right, correct. Now, Senator Bigham, to your A17 amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to thank Senator Curran for bringing this idea forward this session, along with Senators Swazinski, Dibble, Rude, and Eichhorn. Members, disposable wipes are used for changing diapers, personal hygiene, house cleaning, and they can cause major problems when flushed down the toilet. Because they don't break down the way toilet paper does, these wipes clog homeowner and municipal sewer pipes, Madam President. They put stress on community wastewater collection and treatment equipment. They cause cities to spend thousands of dollars on equipment repair and replacement. See, the wipes snag on any imperfection in the sewer pipes, and then they catch passing debris, and then they form a ball, and then that clogs and plugs the pipe. They also get drawn into the sewer line and wastewater treatment plant pumps, clogging and damaging them. And municipalities have manually had to clear out these pipes to remove the clogs. They just are very expensive plumbing bills for homes and for wastewater treatment plants from the city. We've heard about this issue also related to COVID, Madam President, because the people that were having a shortage of toilet paper were maybe using these non-flushable wipes instead, and then there was a warning that went out not to do that, not to flush the non-flushable wipes down the toilet. Starting in 2007, the city of Minnetonka was forced to clear flushable wipes from pipes every 3 days. And Minnetonka's sewer backed up in the past 5 years and have contributed to early equipment failures. And that clearing those backup costs, Madam President, have cost about $1,000 to $15,000 for each clog. And Minnetonka has 8 to 10 backups every year. Once or twice a year, the clogs can cause sewage backup into the homes, and nobody wants that. The city of Avon. Utility teams check pumps in the town sewers every day where there are wipes that clog. They have to use a crane, Madam President, to pull them from the pipes that are 15 to 20 feet under the ground. In the city of Lewiston, they spend about $15,000 a year for a company to clear wipes from the lift pump stations. So we can keep going. The city of St. Peter's collection system has pumps that can handle 6-inch solids, but those balls that catch in the pipes coming through the system have clogged the pumps over and over. In the past 5 years, that city has spent about $100,000 on clearing clogs and repairing pipes after wipes gum them up. So this fantastic bipartisan legislation requires that non-woven disposable products, disposable wipes, sold in Minnesota must be appropriately labeled as not flushable unless the product meets the existing flushability requirements created and that are currently existing, so nothing new, for the Federal Trade Commission. Manufacturer labels on disposable wipes must be approved by the MPCA before they sell products that are marketed as flushable. I'm going to say this does not ban any products or require labeling if the product is deemed flushable. Any manufacturer, there's a civil penalty if the manufacturer violates this prohibition of $100 for each package, and then that penalty is capped at $5,000. The manufacturers that can sell the non-woven disposable products but do not package or label the products are exempt from this prohibition and penalty. And if you have existing stock, Madam President, you can go ahead and sell that remaining inventory. Local governments, metropolitan or metro cities, League of Minnesota Cities, and MPCA strongly support this bill. There is no fiscal note, Madam President, and members, I would ask for your support, and I've already requested a roll call.
Further discussion to the A17 amendment? Senator Ingebretson or Senator Dibble? Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of Senator Bigham's A17. Almost called you representative again, like I did this morning. Senator Bigham's amendment is a very good amendment. It's been broadly supported on a bipartisan basis in this and the other chamber. To the points that she made, this is an extremely important problem that we have, and anyone who's taken a tour of the Metropolitan Wastewater Facility knows how problematic it is and how much more expensive it's become to deal with the issue of this kind of waste. And it's painless and harmless because there's no fiscal note, and it allows for folks to be better informed about how to use these, these products that are growing in popularity. They're misconstrued in their labeling. This simply corrects that. It's a fairly easy way to support both our environment as well as the dollars that we spend on wastewater infrastructure. So I encourage a green vote. Thank you, Madam President.
To the A17 amendment, Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members. I rise against this, in opposition of this, and ask for the members not to agree to this amendment. And the reasons being, members and Madam President, two reasons, I guess. After reviewing the bill, I look at subdivision 4. I see penalties, both not necessarily criminal penalties, but I see civil penalties involved, and I guess I would ask Senator Bigham if she would stand for a question.
Senator Bigham will yield. Senator Ingebretson, to your question.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Bigham, has this been brought to Judiciary Committee for discussion?
Senator Bigham.
Madam President, Senator Ingebretson, I believe Senator Curran's bill has not received a hearing in Judiciary Committee.
Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President, Senator Bigham. The other question, if she would yield.
Senator Bigham will yield. Senator Ingebretson.
Senator, thank you, Madam President. Senator Bigham, has this been heard in any of the environment committees?
Senator Bigham.
Madam President, Mr. Chair, it has not been heard in your committee that I recall, and I think I have perfect attendance.
Senator Ingebretson.
Well, thank you, Madam President, and again, I guess I'm kind of making my case here. It hasn't, COVID, we can use COVID for all kinds of excuses, and let's use it. We have now in this particular bill, and I suppose I could say because of COVID we didn't hear this bill, but this bill would actually go to Senator Rood's Policy Committee, I believe, first, and I don't think it got there either. I don't got a hearing there either. So, members, I don't think people are informed well enough on this, not only through the media, but we should also sit down and just have a good discussion. We haven't heard from the industry. We haven't heard from the local units of governments, other than just an overview. I remember a couple of years ago something about this, but this is really not ready yet for I guess I wouldn't say prime time. That's not the right term, but it's something that I can't put in a bill at this time, or at least I would ask for a red vote.
Further discussion. Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to a point of order.
State your point of order.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to a point of order under Senate Rules Section 35, germaneness. The underlying bill does not have a reference to the section of law that Senator Bigham is attempting to amend on. It is substantially different than the purpose of the amendment and/or the bill, because this goes into trade, marketing, packaging of a product that is commercial. It is not dealing with LCCMR, and I would rise to a point of order and ask for this to be ruled out of order.
And to this point of order. Advice to the President, Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I would say that this is most definitely an environmental issue, and this is most definitely an environmental bill. So I don't know how it greatly expands the scope of this. I really do not see that at all. We're talking about how sewage can back up into homes and municipal wastewater, which can cause contamination into people's water and environmental open bodies of water. I mean, this is almost as environmental subject as you can get. And proof is that the chair of the committee just asked if the author of this amendment had it go through the environmental committee. He didn't ask if it went through Commerce. So it is very much an environmental bill, and I would ask that this is ruled as a germane amendment.
Further advice to the President? Senator Benson. Oh, Senator Dibble? All right.
Madam President, I think this is the third time you failed to recognize me, so I might be in a blind spot. I'll just mention that I'm right here. Thank you. Madam President, I would encourage you to rule that, in fact, this amendment is germane. First of all, the bill is much more wide-ranging than solely dealing with the LCCMR projects. The LCCMR projects simply add to a very expansive and extensive bill that deals with many, many environmental issues. So in that sense, this is an omnibus bill in the truest sense that deals with everything from, hunting to wastewater to flooding to groundwater pollution, et cetera. And furthermore, even within the LCCMR amendment, we see on page 7.33, managing highly saline waste from municipal water treatment. It starts off about, talking about dealing with solid waste management exemptions and the like. And so clearly this is in the spirit and the underlying intent of an omnibus bill. And so I would encourage you to rule that the amendment is well-founded and germane to the bill. It clearly is.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Further advice to the President? Now, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam President. I would support Senator Osmic's germaneness argument. This deals with advertising. This deals with penalties. I searched, and there are no civil penalties anywhere in this bill, so we're dealing with a substantially different subject than a simple LCCMR bill.
Further advice to the President, Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one comment to what Senator Bingham said. Just because it's been referred to an Environment Committee does not necessarily mean that a bill during its course would not have to go to Commerce for a review. So just because it's got one referral, and as we all know, most bills in this body will have to go through multiples, Commerce, I believe, would probably be next stop for this type of activity. So I'd encourage the President to rule this amendment out of order.
Further advice to the President? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't think the bill's referral path is necessarily relevant to the germaneness argument, but so long as we're having that discussion, as opened up by Senator Osmic, I certainly hope that Senator Ingebrigtsen holds every amendment that's going to be offered to this bill to that same standard, that every amendment offered has been through its committee hearing process and all the committees that might have jurisdiction. I will wait with anticipation the various amendments that are being offered, and we'll ask that question if they've been referred to the committees to which they should have been heard. And I'll also point out that we've had many bills and amendments offered that have been through no committee process. In fact, a number of ideas that I've supported in cooperation in conjunction with Senator Newman that never even were bills. But they were good ideas, and we understand that we're operating under a slightly different set of frameworks because deadlines were blown because the crisis hit just as deadlines were looming. And so we've agreed that good ideas aren't necessarily a bad thing and are worthy of consideration as we're considering policy debates on the floor of the Senate. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, members, for your advice.
All I said is.
Members, the point of order is well taken. To further discussion on the A17 amendment. Point of order well taken, so. So the amendment is not germane. So the amendment is not germane. Further discussion on Senate File 4499 as amended. Senator Bach.
Madam President, I'd like to offer the A54 amendment.
The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bach moves to amend Senate File number 4499 as follows. Page 51 after line 17, insert. This is the A54 amendment.
To your amendment, Senator Bach.
Thank you, Madam President. A little background on this amendment for members. Back in, I believe it was 2008, I worked with then Governor Pawlenty, and the state in our bonding bill purchased about 5 miles of shoreline on beautiful Lake Vermilion and about 3,000 acres of land with the intent to create Minnesota's next state park. We did that over a number of bonding bills. We've been appropriating money to develop that. There's a tremendous master plan to create a very, very unique park that offers recreational opportunities to all kinds of people. We previously have completed an RV campground there. We are currently in the process of building camper cabins that individuals will be able to rent there. There are primitive camping sites there. And then the next piece of development, and I had a bill on this year, and when I looked at Senator Senjum's spreadsheet, the $5.8 million that we need to create an ATV campground for this park, it appears like the money to do that is in Senator Senjum's bill. But what we need, and I had a bill on this, is we don't allow ATVs in state parks. This is a different kind of state park. There is a piece of land, several hundred acres, on the other side of Highway 169 that's really divided by a state highway from the larger state park where all the recreational activity is going to happen. And in the original master plan was the development of an ATV campground there. I don't know of any opposition to that. The language that I'm presenting here today is language that the DNR has drafted. It was actually, I believe this bill was scheduled for a hearing before the regular session kind of went into collapse and then weren't able to get around to our normal course of business. So what this amendment does is it creates a secondary unit in the Vermilion Park where ATVs will be allowed only in that portion of the park on the other side of the highway. I have spoken with Senator Root about this. I've spoken with the author of the bill about it. And members, I'd appreciate your support. It's pretty important to have this language or we're going to have a hard time figuring out how we're going to spend, hopefully, the money that we're going to receive in the bonding bill. So appreciate your support.
Further discussion to the bill, Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Bach, yes, we did have a discussion about this, and it has been discussed actually for over some years here now. And I've made it very clear, at least in my time here in the Senate, that there was a shortage and a lack of thereof in the state of Minnesota of trails for ATVs. Since the since maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, maybe even 9, the way time flies, the trails have been opening up in the state, and they're becoming a real attraction. And of course, it's certainly helping the industry. I don't think anybody's looking for a big, long speech on four-wheelers, but nevertheless, we have to make it as friendly as we can. And if the DNR does support this, I know they don't like them in just in general in state parks, but coming and going out of the state parks, I don't have a problem with that. So I would say this is a friendly amendment.
Further discussion to the A54 amendment. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I am sure that I support this. My good friend Senator Bach is offering it, and it has the support of the DNR, which is good enough for me. But I do know this issue of where exactly four-wheelers, off-road vehicles are going, warrants discussion and examination. They're not universally loved everywhere, and they do damage to the scientific and natural areas, for example, and things like that. But I'll just point out, Senator Ingebretson has indicated that this is a friendly amendment, though it hasn't been through the committee process, whereas he held Senator Bigham to a different standard. I'm just noting that for the record, Madam President.
Further discussion to the A54 amendment. Seeing no further discussion, we will proceed to a vote on the A54 amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? And we will pause to collect the votes from the other rooms. There being a sufficient number of votes, the A54 amendment is adopted. Further discussion on Senate File 4499. I have Senator Isaacson on the list to speak next. Senator Isaacson. We will give him a minute or so to there he is, Senator Isaacson.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the author yield for a question?
Senator Ingebretson, the author, would you yield for a question? He does yield. Senator Isaacson.
Senator Ingebretson, I'm concerned about the wakeboard section in your bill, and I'm wondering if we were not to pass any of that, what is the law now managing or governing wakeboards?
Senator Ingebretson.
Want me to be louder? Sorry.
I'm sorry, Madam President, I'm not hearing that question at all.
You bet.
Senator Isaacson.
Usually don't have a problem projecting my voice. I apologize. There's a section in your bill on wakeboards and regulating wakeboards. and wakes in lakes. And I'm wondering if that section weren't to go through, what is the current law passing, or what is the current law right now before it gets passed on managing wakeboards? Is it locally controlled, or how does that work?
Senator Ingebretson.
Madam President, currently there is none. That's been the issue, and that's why you'll see it mirroring the same as when we're talking wake boats, mirroring the same as jet skis, and that's where the resolve is now. I know the industry wanted more than that, but this is a discussion that's just now hitting the table, and I look for it to happen further down the line because there is getting to be an awful lot of discussion, an awful lot of concern about what the wake boats are causing out there in our lakes.
Senator Isaacson.
Thank you. Well, Madam President, I have shockingly 17 lakes in my district, even though I'm a suburban district, with many lake owners and lake associations, and I am resoundingly being told that this is a bad provision, and it's definitely too soon, and it doesn't encompass what they want. This sounds more like, to me, it's more of an industry bill, as you had stated, than it is a lake owners bill, cabin owners bill. And so my concern is that we are, as you said, moving forward on this, and we're not sure we have the agreement that puts everybody in place on this. And so I would say that I oppose that, and I offer the A20 amendment.
Senator Isaacson offers the A20 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Isaacson, Senator Isaacson moves to amend Senate File Number 4499 as follows: page 15, delete sections 28 and 29. This is the A20 amendment.
Senator Isaacson, to your amendment.
What this amendment does is just removes all reference to the wakeboards in statute. And the reason I do that isn't because I'm necessarily opposed to regulating them. I think it makes sense to put safety provisions in there, and some of those parts even are not bad, but I don't want to pick winners and losers in that, and I definitely don't agree with the 200-foot rule that's established by that section of language. And so I would like to see that struck out and commit myself and others to really working to make sure we can find something that's a good middle ground that people can agree to, that takes all parties into place. And so I hope that you'll accept the 820 amendment, and I'd like a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Roll call granted. Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President. I would defer comments to the policy chair, Senator Rood, if she's available for discussions that they had in their hearing.
To the amendment, Senator Rood.
Thank you, Madam President, and Senator Ingebretson and Senator Isaacson. We had an extensive hearing in our committee on this bill, and we had scientists come in and talk to us. And right now, this was the only bill that was brought forward to our committee. And we had a lot of conversation about what we should be doing and what the future holds for this issue. And we know that in the next session we'll be doing more on this, but we had no other bill to work with, no other bill that was put forward to us. And so we felt that coming forward in this summer, we needed something to keep the wake boats away from the shore and doing damage on the shorelines. And so this bill came forward as a very good start to starting the discussion on wakeboards and where we need to go. So without the provision, the 200 feet, we have nothing for next summer. There is no restrictions whatsoever. So I would appreciate that we could, the 200 feet be a start, and I would oppose this amendment. And I think both Senator Ingebretson and I have committed to the fact that we need to have a broader and larger discussion on this emerging issue.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I was in committee when we heard this proposal, and there was pretty strong testimony and pretty strong evidence that the standards that were proposed were proposed by those industry interests who want to popularize these new toys. There was very strong evidence provided that 200 feet was very insufficient for these, really big wakes that get generated. Plus, there are jets that shoot down into the water that stir up the now capped pollutants that are at the bottom of lakes. They, in their ballast, they carry invasive species. There's a lot of concern with noise and disruption of people who are trying to enjoy the lake as well. And there was a lot of concern brought by lake associations asking us whether or not they could further regulate or prevent these new toys from certain places so they didn't damage their lake, didn't bring down the values of their property, didn't disturb their ability to enjoy where they were and the like, and none of those concerns were heeded. We completely lack any sort of peer-reviewed research and study. The state hasn't studied this issue and the like, and so we're really jumping the gun. A question for either if Senator Ruud or Senator Ingebrigtsen would yield.
Well, I think we need one Senator Dibble. It looks like Senator Ruud will yield.
Senator Ruud. Okay, Senator Ruud.
Senator Dibble.
Senator Ruud, what happens if a lake association wants to prohibit wake boats in certain areas? So, will it lead to conflicts? Is there a way to resolve that very valid concern by the lake associations?
Senator Ruud.
Madam Chair and Senator Dibble, I can't disagree with what you've brought forward. We heard great, compelling testimony, and we had folks come forward, but they never came forward with any solutions or any suggestions to the bill, any amendments or anything. So while we had a great discussion, the only bill that was brought forth was the 200 feet. And we asked them to bring things forward, and there was nothing forthcoming but testimony. And which is why I think that we really need to delve into this. And I know that lake associations are working with their counties and their local cities to figure out where we go from here. Because this, again, is uncharted territory. It's a new sport. We're still doing studies. Maybe the University of Minnesota can help us out with some studies. And so I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg of this, of wakeboating and this new sport. And so I think we made a decision based on what we had. And we would love to work with the lake associations and everyone else going forward. But they did not bring anything forward for us to work with other than testimony. And it takes a little bit more than that to create a bill.
Further discussion to the A20 amendment. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I have real concerns about this 200-foot limit. I think that's something that local control ought to be more in charge of. Let people decide based on the depth of the lake and everything else, or whether there's risk of erosion and so on. I think putting this in as a statewide standard for what people can do is taking away a lot of authority. I think it's going to damage a lot of lakes. I think the 200-foot limit is way too close. I urge your rejection of support for the amendment.
Further discussion to the 820 amendment. Senator Isaacson.
Well, thank you. And I have to say that I appreciate the tone of discovery as I'm hearing Senator Ruud and Senator Ingebrigtsen talk about it. But I'm a little concerned that just saying it's the only bill, well, I've seen a lot of bills that are the only bill on the subject, doesn't mean that bill is ready for prime time and should come forward. By their own admission, they say this is uncharted territory. And so I would want to prevent any damage coming to the lakes, the cabins and the property value at all. And I don't want to see that happen, not just because I'm a fisherman, but because I'm genuinely concerned that as Senator Dibble talked about, the peer research was lacking in understanding this. And I do agree that it is kind of uncharted waters and something we should give more time to. I'm not convinced that them not bringing forth their own version of that is relevant to this argument because maybe they didn't want it changed. And that's why they didn't offer something different. I'm not sure. I do know they have the authority in conjunction with the county and the DNR to set their own standards for each lake. And I would like every lake to be able to set its own standards and decide what they want. If they want to be a commercial lake that encourages wakeboarding and that kind of stuff, go for it. If they want to be a lake that doesn't encourage that, also go for it. It should be up to each lake owner who's invested time and money into that lake. Their life savings and their money is invested into a cabin for their recreation, and I think they should have some say over this. And what this bill does is says they don't get to have say over that. And I think that's a bad idea, and it's not a good message for us to be descending from St. Paul. So I definitely hope you'll vote for the 820 amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Rude.
Madam Chair and Senator Isaacson, I see your passion for the water, but I have to remind this body that the people that own Lakeshore on the lake do not own the lake. And the lake access is for everyone and the enjoyment of everyone in the state of Minnesota for every lake that's there. And so I think we go down a very dangerous path when we have the folks that own the property on the lake make the decisions for how that lake is used. And so I would caution us not to go down that direction.
Further discussion to the 820 amendment? Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President and members for the discussion here. And you can see that this is something relatively new. And again, Senator Rude did mention that the lake associations don't own the lake. So we have to take into consideration those that are out there boating on the weekends that come from the metro suburb areas. And yes, I see this to be just the beginning of discussion. I think having this minimal restriction on there is a start, and you might find there's even discussions about lakes not big enough to even have these boats in there, but so that's getting pretty restrictive, especially when they're going out and they're purchasing these very expensive boats. And my experience, and for what it's worth, and then I'm going to sit down. I still don't agree with the amendment. I'd ask to vote against it. But I live on Lake Ida. When I see the wake boats, they're usually out in the middle of the lake. They respect the fishermen real well, I think, and I don't think they're doing a whole lot of damage. But that's just where I'm at. I know there's some that are going to cut it real close, but this is a start of the conversation, and we'll have many more.
Further discussion on the 820 amendment? Senator Isaacson.
Thank you. Yeah, in what means we must be in bizarro world, I'm going to make the following statement. I'm pretty sure the lake owners can make better decisions about their lakes than we can here in St. Paul. Not something you hear, usually this line is used in reverse, but I'm pretty confident those people that invested their lives in that lake have an interest in that lake doing well. And I think this argument mirrors several arguments I've heard from my friends in the GOP on other issues that are the exact same. So it seems a little bit inconsistent that we would say, and I recognize that the lake is not the property of the lake owners, but it is in their best interest that that lake is in best possible shape it can be, both financially and personally. So it doesn't make any sense we wouldn't trust them to make good decisions for the lakes. Not only that, even if they make a regulation that doesn't match what is healthy for that lake, the DNR can overrule them. So there's already a way in place to take care of that. So folks, this has got to be a green vote for 820. We got to send this back. This is not ready for prime time. This is not prepared for what we need to do for our lakes. And I know the lake owners, cabin owners in my district would be very unhappy to hear that this bill passed. Thank you. Or amendment passed. Did not pass. Sorry.
Further discussion to the 820 amendment? Senator Ingebretson.
I wasn't going to talk anymore. Thank you, Madam President, but I would hope that Senator Isaacson uses that same passion when we start talking about muskies and lake owners not wanting muskies. So I thought I'd throw that in.
Further discussion to the 820 amendment? Senator Rude.
Madam President, just one more comment, because I want to make sure that everyone knows that local units of government can set their own regulations regarding wakeboards. So Crow Wing County, the city of Lakeshore, they can make, I know that in the city of Lakeshore, one of the lakes, they wanted to make regulations for wakeboards because the lake is long and narrow and maybe it's not appropriate for that lake. So local units of government can also regulate the lakes.
Further discussion on the 820 amendment? Senator Isaacson.
Thank you. Would Senator Rude yield for a question, please?
Senator Rude will yield. Senator Isaacson.
Senator Rude, is it my understanding that if this law passes, that you're saying that local units of government can do something different than what this law says, expand it or go below it? Is that what you're saying?
Senator Rude.
I believe that they would have to follow the guidelines that they use for all state laws.
Senator Isaacson.
So if that's the case, then what you just said prior to that would be incorrect then, because they can't supersede or preempt these laws. So they don't have the control over the lake at that point. The control comes from the state statute rather than their local ordinances. And so that's, to me, the crux of what is the problem here.
Senator Rood.
And Madam Chair, I do believe that local units of government can make laws that are more restrictive but not less, or more restrictive but not less. And so I believe that's their purview.
Seeing no further discussion, we will proceed to a vote. All those in favor of the a roll vote? All right. Roll call was requested. Roll call granted. We will proceed to the roll call vote. Secretary will take the roll. The retiring room should come to cast their vote. Capitol Room 303, come to the chamber to cast your vote. Yes. Yeah. The President's office, come to the chamber to vote. Capital 206, come to the chamber to vote. And Capital 237, come to the chamber to vote. Members, I remind you that as soon as you cast your vote, you need to leave the chamber. Capital 237, come to the chamber to vote. Capital 323, come to the chamber to vote. Remind you, senators, to leave the chamber as soon as you have cast your ballot. The East Gallery, come to the chamber to cast your vote. So that is the retiring room, Capital 303, the President's office, Capital 206, Capital 237, Capital 323, and the East Gallery. Please come to the chamber if you have not already to cast your vote. All right. 40.7. Under Rule 40.7, I will call on Senator Kent to report the votes.
Thank you, Madam President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report I report no for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes no. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. And I'll call on Senator Benson to report the votes under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Anderson B. votes no.
Anderson B. votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes no.
Senator Hall votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes no.
Senator Newman votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes no.
Senator Senjum votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes no.
Senator Rosen votes no. There being 38 nays, the Secretary will close all those having voted who desired to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 28 ayes and 38 nays, the 820 amendment is not adopted. Further discussion on the Senate File 4499. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. If Senator Ingebrigtsen would yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Dibble.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, there's first before I begin, I have a series of questions here, but before I do, I had asked a couple of questions previously. One was whether the LCCMR list was that which was agreed to with our partners in the House, and you answered in the affirmative. I've since heard that that is not the case, that in fact there is not support for at least one inclusion, and there was a deletion of an element that the House had requested. So I think it's important for members to know that the A16 as presented and represented, in which we all supported based on the information that Senator Ingebrigtsen gave us, in fact is not the product of an agreement with our House counterparts. I also asked a question about one of the projects which provides some direct funding to a company called DEMCON, and what the public benefit would result in, whether there's a public partner in the research portion. And like we do with all these LCCMR projects, even if there's a private partner, there's a partnership with the University of Minnesota or another public research entity, and if there's resulting revenue that results, that revenue is typically shared in the form of royalties. And Senator Ingebrigtsen answered in the affirmative that was the case. That is not the case. There is no public partner, no university partner, and no agreement as to what happens when they derive profits from their leach buster trademarked water treatment system that we're going to help them validate and do the research for with public funds. So members, I just needed to correct the record.
Senator Dibble, you asked Senator Ingebrigtsen to yield for a question.
Yes, and I said I needed to preface my question with some comments. I've made those comments. I will now ask Senator Ingebrigtsen a question. I'm looking at section 1, which is on page 2 of the first engrossment, and it's about interpreting certain statements. It says that there is no policy, guideline, bulletin, manual, standard, interpretive statement, or anything that the DNR can use, or one of those, it's either DNR or PCA, but whatever it is. Basically, it says that if in fact there's some sort of a communication, guidance, bulletins, et cetera, it would have to go through the entire rulemaking process. And so I'm wondering what problem is this trying to solve, and what, why are we doing this? This happens all the time, and it is a way in which the agencies communicate with those who are doing things, under their permits out in the real world.
Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Dibble, these are the rulemaking things I believe you're talking about, make recommendations, and that's pretty standard throughout. Also, with the questions in regards to the appropriations being agreed upon, they were agreed upon. This is the bill. This is the bill, and two Democrat House members didn't vote for it, but the Democrat senators on there did. So I want to make that clear. With regards to the profits of the university, I stand corrected. I just do in general know that when there is anything that is, I believe, produced or invented or through technology and whatever through the university, I know they do own those rights, and I would stand corrected on that.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll just note for the record, when you use terms like Democrat senator, Democrat House member, that's a pejorative. We're Democratic senators, we're Democratic House members. I'd appreciate using the terms that we prefer. So the record stands. The LCD-CMAR list is not agreed to by partners in the House, so we voted for an affirmative on A16 with false information that was provided to us. To the question about what problem are we solving when we can't allow the PCA or the DNR to communicate in forms other than the full-fledged rulemaking process, which is very expensive and takes a long, long time. Why can't rules be illuminated through memos and conversations and the like as stakeholders are negotiating around their permit obligations? And why are we so severely constraining the ability for the obligations of those who would seek to pollute in Section 1, lines 2.14 to 2.18?
Senator Ingebretson. Senator Dibble, I know you have maybe a series of questions, but I believe the proper order, if you're going to have another question, is for me to ask Senator Ingebretson to yield. Senator Ingebretson, you will yield? Okay, Senator Dibble.
Yes, I would, but I'm going to have to have him
ask your question, and Senator Ingebretson.
Repeat the question, please. Thanks.
Senator Dibble, to repeat the question.
Senator Ingebretson, lines 2.14 and 2.18, Section 1 of the Senate File 4499, the first engrossment reads, an agency must not seek to impose or require any permit or contract or to enforce against any person through monetary or non-monetary penalty a policy, guideline, bulletin, criterion, manual, standard, interpretive statement, or similar pronouncement that has not been properly adopted under this chapter. In other words, the agency can't simply write a memo that says rules say such and such or thus and so, that in fact they can't communicate in any form or fashion unless that memo or that manual or that standard has gone through the rules themselves. What problem are we trying to solve? What permit, can you tell me, is being held to a standard that hasn't been adopted by a rule already?
Senator Ingebretson.
Well, Senator, thank you, Madam President. Senator Dibble, I think you understand the rulemaking process. I'm not understanding quite what you're talking about, but the commissioners have been giving the authority for rulemaking, and that's nothing new around here. That's been around for a long time. There may be some that don't agree with the rulemaking authority, but in general, I understand the concept. I understand the idea of a governor coming, being elected and appointing his own commissioners and them having rulemaking authorities. In fact, if they didn't have that, in a lot of cases, very minor cases, they would have to come back to the legislature. Not being a full-time legislature, we just simply couldn't do that. It has to operate that way, and I get that. I do, however, have a problem with some of the rulemaking decisions that come down, as well as I'm sure you do. Occasionally, those rules should probably be set aside, and it should be the decision of the legislature. So I hope I'm answering your question, but I understand the rulemaking process, and I think you do as well.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I do, and that's what concerns me. The rulemaking process is lengthy and expensive, and this section would imply that there are communications and guidance that are outside of the rulemaking process, and so this is a problem, a solution in search of a problem. But I'm ready to move on if Senator Ingebretson would yield, Madam President.
Sure. Senator Ingebretson will yield. Senator Dibble.
The next section, and apologies in advance, Madam President. I have a number of questions, but I didn't offer this bill. This is a very lengthy bill with a lot of provisions that are quite controversial, and I think the public deserves to hear what some of the implications are, because they appear to be minor technical changes. They have some significant environmental consequences. Section 54, my question is, what is the term? It has to do with water permits and transferring water permits from one party to another. And the question is, what is the term of a water permit? And it's retroactive to January 1st, 2010. How many water permits have been transferred in those past 10 years? And how many of the conditions that have been placed on those transferred permits are now going to be voided? And these are, of course, conditions that protect our water quality and our water supply. How many permits are going to be voided by this retroactivity to 2010?
Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President. And I think what you're referring to, Senator Dibble, is the transfer of a permit from a acquisition of land from one to the next. That's what it is. That's the meaning of it. Basically, if I have an irrigator, I'm an irrigator, and I decide to sell the land to you, but that permit carries over to you. They don't have to reapply for a permit. They would have to obviously re-register, but they wouldn't have to go through the full process.
Further discussion on the Senate File 4499 as amended. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. The language is retroactive to 2010. We're in 2020, so that's 10 years of retroactivity, which states that no conditions can be placed on a permit when it's transferred. And we know that, in fact, at the point of transfer, new facts might be in light. There might be new conditions that the DNR has to consider around the supply of water in a particular area, or impacts. And this is going to avoid quite a few of those conditions and requirements that have been placed. Do we know how many we're talking about and where?
Further discussion on the Senate File 4499 as amended. Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President. And Senator Dibble, no, I don't have that number, but it's very clear that that's what this statute addresses. It addresses that transfer, and yes, it is retroactive to 2010, but no, I don't have that number. I can certainly get it for you.
Further discussion to Senate File 4499. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I wish we had it today, because this is when the public is listening, and we're going to pass a law that has retroactivity to 10 years. It may have very substantial and significant negative implications for our groundwater supply and quality. But I'm ready to move on. Madam President, if Senator Ingebretson would yield.
Senator Dibble, I was conferring here with the Secretary. Did you have a question?
Sure.
Or?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, if Senator Ingebretson would yield.
Senator Ingebretson will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. So on page 29, section 57, lines 29.9 and 29.10, it says that sustainable means a change in hydrologic regime of 20% or less relative to the August median stream flow. And so I'm just curious to know what that means. What is actually sustainable in terms of long-term Minnesota water supplies? What is hydrologic regime? And what is the average August flow that's referred to? What is the basis for making and assuming a change, the 20% change?
Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President. And Senator Dibble, I think I'm going to defer that question to Senator Ruud. Sticking the policy here, if she is available, she could answer that.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you. I can pause on that until Senator Ruud.
Just a moment, Senator Dibble. I need to be sure I've got correct order here. Senator Ruud will yield. Senator Dibble, the question has been asked, and Senator Ruud, are you ready?
Madam President and Senator Dibble, could you, I do not have the bill in front of me, but I would be happy if you could repeat the question. I will see if I can answer for you.
Okay, Senator Dibble.
Certainly. I see the bill is making its way to you. I'll just wait a moment.
Madam Chair, I have the bill.
So, Madam President.
Senator Dibble.
If I could draw Senator Ruud's attention to page 29 of the first engrossment of the bill. And it's section 57, the new language, which reads on 29.9 and 29.10. It defines sustainable as a change in hydrologic regime of 20% or less relative to the August median stream flow. So what is a hydrologic regime, and what is 20% or less of what? What is the August median stream flow, and why is that important?
Senator Ruud.
Madam President and Senator Dibble, I do not know the answer to your question.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I'll move on then if Senator Ingebretson would yield for a question.
Senator Ingebretson will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm looking at the next section now on page 29, section 58. On line 29.9, it says, this comes at the request of the irrigators and those who feel like their well has been damaged or interfered with. It says the commissioner must take into account the condition of the affected well. And so I'm just wondering why we include that language, the existing condition of the affected well, when we're talking about a well that's been damaged by the actions of a nearby irrigation project.
Senator Ingebretson.
Madam President, I would ask if Senator Howe is in the building to come down and talk about this provision. I know this was something that he was very, very much involved in here. I know well interference has certainly been somewhat of an issue. So if I could get him, if you could go to a different question while he comes down. I'm not sure where he's at right now, but I would like that question answered by him.
Senator Ingebretson, because of the dispersion of our Senate members, Senator Howe is coming to the floor. It will just take him a moment to get here.
So, Madam President.
Senator Dibble.
In the interest of time, we can move on to my next question pending Senator Howe's arrival.
Senator Dibble, your next question, who would you address it to, Senator Dibble?
I'll address it to Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Dibble.
So, Senator Ingebrigtsen, I would call your attention to page 34. And this has to do with, we've had a lot of discussion about this in committee over the last couple of years, and what this simply does is it allows an industry that has installed a water treatment system to avoid any obligation for the next 16 years to comply with any new science, any new standards, any new learnings that have cropped up in that time, from having to comply with, no matter what the public health consequences are, they won't have to upgrade their system at all. It's the same thing that we've done for the municipal systems, which may be somewhat defensible, though I don't support that either, because that's done over the life of a particular bonding project and the like. But the concern is that the MPCA already has the authority to grant exemptions when necessary, and can consider the economic consequence, but at the same time, the public's interest is preserved if in fact something comes to light, and we need to make sure that we're addressing a pollutant or a public health concern that's emanating from an industry that's polluting into our public water that we drink and rely on. So Senator Ingebrigtsen, Section 60, can you please explain what public interest is served and why this proposal is necessary?
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Madam President and Senator, I think you asked why the 16 years, as you can see, is existing law. There was a lot of discussion about that. As members may know, Madam President and Senator Dibble, that in order to even build something in Minnesota or to construct something in Minnesota, wastewater treatment facility, they have to go through a lot of hoops and a lot of permits. This is not just done overnight, and a lot of money is invested in this. And once it is approved and has its stamp of approval, these industries are made to last a long time. And for something to change 2 or 3 or even 5 or 6 years later, making a huge change for whatever reason, whatever somebody could come up with, whatever reason, even something unreasonable, to require the industry to make a significant change is nearly cost prohibitive. So you would be fighting against your own wastewater, it seems to me. So I don't think it's anything pollution-wise. It's you can stage it as you have, that if something were to come up tomorrow, the MPCA can take actions towards that. But if it's significant, it's still it's going to have to be 16 years, and I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the A51 amendment.
The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Dibble moves to amend Senate File 4499 as follows. Page 34 deletes Section 60. This is Amendment A51.
Senator Dibble, to your amendment, the A51.
Thank you, Madam President. The A51 would delete this provision. Madam President, Senator Ingebrigtsen thinks it's no big deal. I disagree. I think it is a very big deal. An NPDES permit, and it's the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, is a permit to pollute. Simply put, it allows an industry to dump their waste into the local waterway, but only to those amounts that have shown to cause as little harm to the environment or human health as is possible. And it's very easy to imagine that a permit issued today within a 16-year time frame, it's going to come to light that something that we didn't think was was so damaging is quite consequential to human health, and we need to bring those standards down a little bit. And there are opportunities for waivers and you know, issues around financing these things. These don't come about in an arbitrary fashion. In fact, you know, they're supported by science and research, and it's important that we simply not allow our industries to use our waterways as free and open sewers willy-nilly. That has a huge consequence on the public good and the public benefit. I would request a roll call on the A51.
Roll call being requested. Roll call granted. Senator Ingebretson to the A51 amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask for a red vote on this. Basically, I guess you make the decision when you vote whether you want to treat the industry as cities and local units of governments are treated. It's all it is it's a treatment of fairness for industry being treated the same as cities and municipalities.
Further discussion on the A51 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, a roll call being requested. The Secretary will take the roll. Members in the chamber, please cast your vote. Retiring room, please come cast your vote. Capital 303, come cast your vote. And the President's office, please come to the chamber to cast your vote. And members, remember to leave the chamber after you have cast your vote. Capital 206, please come to the chamber to cast your vote. Capital 237, please come to the chamber to cast your vote. Okay. Capital 323, please come to the chamber to cast your vote. And the East Gallery, please come to the chamber to cast your vote. To all members, the chamber is open to cast your vote. Remember, members, to leave the chamber after you have cast your vote. Under Rule 4.7, I will call on Senator Hayden to report the votes.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Clausen votes aye.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Diesick votes aye.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Eaton votes aye.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Franzen votes aye.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Frantz votes aye.
Senator Frantz votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Lane votes aye.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Latz votes aye.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Newton votes aye.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Hayden.
Senator Sparks votes nay.
Senator Sparks votes no. Senator Hayden.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Hayden.
And finally, Senator Wickland votes aye.
Senator Wickland votes aye. Under Rule 40.7, I'll call on Senator Benson to report the votes.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Anderson B. votes no.
Anderson B. votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes no.
Senator Hall votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes no.
Senator Newman votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes no.
Senator Senjum votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes no.
Senator Rosen votes no.
And that completes my list. Thank you.
All members having cast a vote who desire to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 26 ayes, 41 nays, the A51 amendment is not adopted. Further discussion to Senate File 5499. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I think it's 4499, Senate File 4499. Madam President, I saw Senator Howe
It is
earlier.
Senate File 4499.
Yeah. So I saw him earlier. I don't know if we want to
Senator
revert back
Dibble.
to that question, Madam President. Should we await Senator Howe? I had questions. We were waiting for Senator Howe earlier. So I can move on if need be.
Senator Dibble, do you have another question or another comment,
Yeah, maybe
Senator
I can,
Dibble?
Madam President, give early warning to Senator Matthews that I'll have a question about the Clean Car Standards, Section 66.
Are you asking Senator Matthews to yield?
No, there's Senator Howe.
Senator Howe, Senator Dibble is asking you to yield to a question.
Yes.
Senator Howe yields. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Howe, I had a question about Section 58 having to do with well interference and contested case hearings. So my question is, why we require that the commissioner take into account the condition of the affected well when making a determination of the validation of a claim that a well has been harmed by an irrigator's effort to take and request to take more water from a given area.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam President, and Senator Dibble. The reason that we put that in there because there's a great difference between a 10-year-old well and a 40-year-old well or a 70-year-old well. There's a big difference between a sandpoint well and a cased well. You may have the problem that it may have tested positive for sulfates, nitrates prior to this being affected. So usually when you transfer properties, people have their wells tested to make sure it's drinkable. All that should be looked at as far as the condition of the well before you make the determination that the drilling of this other irrigation well had that dramatic of effect on this well.
Further discussion? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Second question, which is on the second part of the new language, paragraph C. Why is the person who has been charged with helping to remedy a problem with a well, given and disagrees with that determination? So the irrigator, who has been found to damage someone's well and disagrees with that finding, is automatically granted a contested case hearing. When we don't automatically grant a contested case to anyone else, then we're not granting an automatic contested case to the well owner when the commissioner might find against them. Why are we only favoring one side here? Why are we granting automatically when we don't really grant anyone anywhere in law an automatic contested case? And we're not allowing that person who's harmed, who might disagree with the finding of the commissioner, an automatic contested case hearing.
So, Senator Dibble, are you asking someone a question?
Madam President, if Senator Howe would retroactively yield to that question, please.
Senator Howe will yield. Senator Howe.
Well, thank you, Madam President. And Senator Dibble, the way this normally works is if they, within 30 days, they have to petition for that hearing. And it has been a problem in the past, not very difficult to get those contested hearings, and due to the past problem with that, that is why it's in the bill.
Further discussion.
But they don't. Excuse me, Madam President.
Senator Howe.
They don't have to request. Many of these guys, if they, depending upon what it looks like and what the determination is, many of the times they don't even request a hearing. But if they believe that they've been harmed by that, they can request a hearing.
Further discussion? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I'll just say this. The way I read this language, a low-income person who couldn't easily afford to upgrade their well and has that well damaged by a more powerful interest who comes in, an irrigator, their well may be older or not in great condition. Because of their economic circumstances, they have no standing to bring a claim for damage because of the new language that says the condition of the affected well has to be taken into account. And then we further tilt the playing field in favor of the more powerful interest by saying if the more powerful interest disagrees with the commissioner's decision that that entity has to contribute to the repair of a damaged well, they can contest that, and we don't give that same right to the person with the damaged well who disagrees with a finding that goes contrary to them. And I'll just note for the record that the DNR denied several requests for contested case hearings on a very controversial mine permit, but we're giving this entity just automatic rights to contested cases. So, I don't have an amendment. I just wanted to call those questions out for the public's benefit and for the record, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Further discussion?
Madam President, I have if
Senator Dibble.
Senator Ingebrigtsen might yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Dibble.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, in section 66 on page 39, just one little word is dropped in, and that's on 39.13, and that's the word not. And it says that the agency cannot include maximum allowable standards of emissions of air contaminants from motor vehicles. Senator Ingebrigtsen, why is pollution that comes from cars, motor vehicles, not something that the Pollution Control Agency should be concerned about when we know that literally tens of thousands of people suffer from heart and lung ailment that's directly attributable to tailpipe emissions, and it's the second leading cause of death, at least we know in the metro area, contributing to those who have underlying conditions and causing their premature death. Why would we simply take that authority away from the Pollution Control Agency, which is an enormous public interest and an enormous public health concern?
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam President and Senator Dibble. Frankly, it might be an enormous issue in the people that you communicate with or that communicate you with, or excuse me, with you in the Senate, but that's not the case with me. And that's not the case with a lot of Minnesotans here. I think what's happening here is, if this is not put in here, what's going to happen is we're going to be forced upon by a governmental agency to change the standards that very few actually agree with, and it's just not right. It's simply not. It's not right. If we're talking car emissions, we know the cars have become more efficient over the years. You've been part of, I'm sure, the process of making sure that we have cleaner cars that are more efficient. And I think that's proven to work. So to say that it's killing people, or you're making it sound like people are dropping all over the place because of car emissions, I think is disingenuous, and frankly, those people that think that should be called out, because it's not. And so that's why that word has been put in this language.
Further discussion. Senator Dibble.
Madam President, well, Senator Ingebrigtsen, it's not just guesswork, and it's not people making things up. It is proven science that pollution from vehicles causes illness and death among Minnesotans in the thousands. And it is important for the Pollution Control Agency to protect and provide for the health of Minnesotans by addressing the pollution that comes from factories, that comes from all kinds of human activities, including our vehicles. And you can call us out all you want, and we'll stand and we'll offer you the science in exchange for the conjecture that I'm hearing on the Senate floor right now. Madam President, I offer the A52 amendment.
Senator Dibble offers the A52 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Dibble moves to amend Senate File 4499 as follows. Page 39, delete Section 66.
To the amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. The A52 would repeal this section, Section 66, thus making sure and ensuring that the PCA can continue to have some authority over the regulation of pollution that comes from vehicles, rather than removing that and putting thousands and thousands of more Minnesotans directly in harm's way.
Further discussion to the A52 amendment, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Senator Dibble, I think,
Senator
had not
Dibbles.
finished.
Oh,
Okay.
Madam President, I forgot to ask for a roll call, I think. I would like to request a roll call vote.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Madam President and Senator Dibble. I believe this is the what's being referred to as the emissions control bill Senator Matthews has. Before I ask him to make some comments on it, first of all, I would ask for a not to support this amendment. And I think Senator Matthews will tell you why, but I feel very strongly as well that, you know, we being the first state in the Midwest to try and tackle this and to also include themselves in the include ourselves in the management or the air emissions that are being restrictions that are being put on in California, mirroring the California standards, which are more stringent than the federal. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Matthews for some more discussion here with regards to why we're doing this and why one individual would take it upon himself or herself to put this standard into Minnesota when there's many other 201 of us that could actually make that decision. We think it's an overreach, but I'll let him answer the questions.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. President. Apologies, Senator Dibble didn't quite make it down in time for your earlier question, but thank you for bringing this amendment forward and giving us the opportunity to discuss it. I, too, would urge a no vote on the A52 amendment, and I brought the section forward that you see in the bill about repealing the rulemaking on the Clean Cars Standard for one simple reason. I actually don't care if you have a preference, if you think it's a good policy choice, or if you think it's not a good policy choice. I stand on the fundamental principle that that's not the role for an unelected government agency to make a policy decision at that level unilaterally without any discussion in the legislature. I was pretty amazed when we had hearings on this bill earlier this session. I specifically asked the agency if they considered whether they would bring their proposal forward to the legislature to debate in bill form rather than just doing it through rulemaking. And I expected the answer to be no, thinking that they just wanted to avoid us altogether. But they answered actually even worse. They said yes. They did consider whether they should bring it to the legislature. They apparently decided to make a political decision that they were better off getting their agenda forward if they did it via rulemaking. Whether you support the provision or not, I think you should support the bill as it is stated, because it's the role of the legislature, those with election certificates that are accountable back to people in our district from all around Minnesota, that we're the ones that are to be making this determination, not an unelected government agency. I spoke with many people throughout my district on this topic. I had a car dealer that said he would love to sell electric vehicles, and he will, as soon as the demand is high enough that would merit having them on his lot. He said, I will be the first one busting the doors down at the manufacturers that supply the vehicles to my lot to make sure that I fulfill the demand that my customers have. But right now, that demand is simply not there. Those that want to get electric vehicles right now can go out and get them. And many options are there today, and the market is developing more models, more options as we speak. But we do not need government regulation to require all of our businesses to have these on their lots, whether it would be sold or not. That's just simply not the right way to go. That's not the constitutional way to go. And so, members, I would ask for a resounding no vote on the A52 amendment.
Members, we're on the A52 amendment. Any further discussion? Senator Dibble?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Matthews, and I respect Senator Matthews' perspective on the role of the legislature vis-a-vis the role of the agency, and that's a perspective that that we can disagree on, but I fully respect. I want to be clear about that. However, I will say that we are doing exactly what the legislature has within its power to do, just by virtue of considering this language. This is the legislature's authority, by inclusion of one word, not, eliminating the PCA's authority to consider such a thing. Likewise, if the PCA were to adopt regulations that would cause our cars that are available in Minnesota to be cleaner and cause less harm to public health, the legislature can invalidate or amend those rules in any way, shape, form it sees fit. So there is no diminishment or diminution of the legislature's authority whatsoever by the PCA carrying out its statutorily required mission and mandate as the laws of the Minnesota set forth. And so I think just by virtue of Senator Matthews offering this language disproves the argument that he makes, though I respect that he believes that we should have a proactive direction on this specific policy item. I disagree with his analysis about the demand side of the question. It is shown clearly that those states that do have these types of policies in place have tremendous demand. And we know just by simple market analysis that when we put these sorts of things in place, the supporting infrastructure then follows, which means, by the way, members, thousands of jobs in putting together the electric vehicle infrastructure. That is not going to come to Minnesota unless we have policies like this in place that send the market signal that then allow Minnesotans to be more comfortable. I can tell you that my dealers and my constituents say they go to dealers and they have to go on long, years-long waiting lists. And some of the models simply aren't available. They have to go out of state, taking their dollars to other dealers in other places to buy the cars that they want that are available in the market. Fully half or more of the electric vehicles that are in the market today don't even come to Minnesota because of the very dynamic I just described. The infrastructure is not here, and so the market hasn't fully formed, and this would allow us to do that, to give Minnesotans choice and the ability to be healthier and to save a lot of money on fuel costs. It's much, much less expensive to own and operate, even though you pay a little bit more in some cases. Over the life of a vehicle, you pay a lot less for that car because the repairs cost a lot less, and you pay almost nothing for your fuel costs. And so I would encourage a green vote for the A52. Thank you, Mr. President.
I have Senator Ingebrigtsen followed by Senator Marty. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I rise in opposition of this vote. Senator Dibble makes the point that the legislature did give the governor the authority back in, I believe it was 1969. I might be wrong on my date. However, it was a long time ago. And you all have to remember that things going on in 1969 are way different than what's going on now. There was a lot more pollution going on back then. There's a lot less now. The legislature did give the governor the authority, no matter what party that governor belongs to make rules. However, those rules can also be taken away, and that's exactly what's happening. And if I was the governor sitting there by myself and I had 201 other people in the legislature to help me make this big of a decision, that's what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be cramming it down the throats of the public that put them in office to be reasonable with especially one Minnesota. So statutorily we can take away what we've given the governor. If we can't do that, then we may as well not be here. So a vote for Senator Dibble's amendment is a vote against F-150s and Suburbans and vans that all our young families and people are driving around in our state today. Members, let the market do it. It'll come. I'm not going to stand here and deny that that's not going to happen. But it's way too soon, way too early, way too big of a decision for one person to be making. Again, I have to have a resounding no on this vote.
I have Senator Marty followed by Senator Westrom. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Ingebrigtsen, you were saying cars are getting cleaner, and they are. And they're not getting cleaner because auto manufacturers just decided to do it. They're getting cleaner because government regulations required them to do so. That's why we've been making the progress. You say this was put in law where the legislature gave the administration the authority to do this. You said 1969. That may be correct. I'm not sure if that was the year or not. But then you say, well, this is moving much too fast. Well, that's 45, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, and it seems to me we're not moving very fast. When you look at all the people, and Senator Dibble referred to people who die from things like asthma, which has gone up significantly and maybe not a problem in every community, but it is a huge problem in many parts of the state, and the science tells us there are many people who die from asthma caused by particulate pollution and everything else from automobiles. That's why we have these standards to protect the public interest. And in the last 15, 20, 30 years, concern about climate has grown significantly and grown fast, and it's an urgent issue. And you say, we shouldn't do this. Well, frankly, what's happening in this section of the bill, you're adding, one word. When Senator Dibble said one word change, I thought, I bet I can guess what that one word is. It's one that changes the exact purpose to the opposite. Instead of saying that the MPCA can regulate air quality, including the maximum permissible limits from autos, you take out they cannot do so. I think that's a huge step backwards at a time when we have to address climate, when our auto sector is, if not the biggest, the second biggest contributor to climate change of our economy. And we're doing very little about it. I think Senator Dibble was right when you have states that have the stiffer standards. We're allowed two standards. The federal ones are the ones that the administration's trying to implement. Two choices. The states that have the tougher standard are getting more choices for their consumers. They are getting more choices. And the consumers are buying them because they want them, because they are cheaper to operate, more expensive initially. But as the industry is going that way, number of manufacturers saying they're not going to have any internal combustion engines within a few years. We're stupid to be behind the times and say, let everybody else get those cars first. Let's let our dealers benefit from it too. This is something, it's not a new issue. This has been around a long time. I carried a bill on this a number of years ago. Climate concerns have gotten only more urgent since then. I think this is an urgent amendment to defeat this provision in the bill. This is a provision in the bill would bring us backward. It would say the state can no longer regulate the maximum emissions from automobiles. How many Minnesotans think that's a good idea? I don't know where you're getting the polls that say people oppose these standards. But the idea we'd move backwards on this, I don't think you're going to get a lot of Minnesotans agreeing with you on that. You'll get plenty, but not a majority, not close to a majority. I strongly urge support for the Dibble amendment.
Next on the list, we have Senator Westrom, followed by Senator Dibble. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, members, I would rise to speak against the Dibble amendment. And we're talking about the fourth branch of government here, members. This is a good civics lesson in what Senator Dibble has brought forward and brought to light, but Senator Ingebrigtsen has brought to light in his bill is the fourth branch of government. And so those that want to vote green for this will be the ones that enable and create and foster this fourth branch of government. And a red vote will help rein in this out-of-control fourth branch of government. Now, when I was in high school civics, and even in college, they never talked about the fourth branch of government. And so those young people that are out of school today watching this, maybe they're getting some extra credit from their teacher, learn about the fourth branch of government, because it is an uncontrollable, an unwieldy, unresponsive, unelected branch of government that does whatever it wants as long as it can get away with it. The fourth branch of government is an administrative agency under the executive branch that has run amok. It's run amok at the federal level. It's run amok at the state level. And in law school, which is where we studied the fourth branch of government, is this administrative law branch that you have to dig way back to and find the organic statute. The organic statute. And it is that organic statute that grows some unbelievable beanstalks. And this is one of those beanstalks that we are trying to chop down and bring back under the control of the legislature, which had the original authority. But it's an organic statute reaching way back, 50 years ago nearly, to 1969 or thereabouts, that they have found this crafty way under the administrative law, the administrative agencies, this fourth branch of government, to decide to do to the people what the legislature has not decided to do because they think they are the kingmakers. And it is their duty as unelected officials to impose this upon the minions of the state because they have been paid by the taxpayers, have this appointed or hired position, unelected, accountable to few. And so, members, this vote goes quite deep. Do we live with the three branches of government, with the legislative body controlling and making the laws? On big public policies like this, should the legislature weigh in and pass the policy? The legislature that's elected by the citizens and the voters of its district and state? Or should they pass an organic statute that 50 years later an agency can use, contort, twist, and figure out a way to bring forth rulemaking policies that the legislature has yet to pass, nor did they pass. And so, members, let's take a deep breath, recognize what this is. Should the legislature make the laws of the state and changes in the state? Or should the fourth branch of government? I submit to you the fourth branch of government needs to be reined in federally and at the state level. And Senator Ingebrigtsen, thank you for bringing this bill forward and highlighting this. Many of us saw this last fall. All of a sudden there were some meetings across the state, one near my district. Last minute I was invited to it. Seemed like very few knew about it, but many showed up interested and concerned because many in this livelihood were concerned about the new rule that the state agencies, without the legislative approval, was going to try to push under this current governor's administration. And so, members, there's many businesses, many retailers of cars, service shops, citizens, and farmers. Farmers concerned about the vehicles they'll be able to drive or purchase to do the job and the task that they have at hand. The district where I come from, there's a lot of farmers. There's a reason Ram has a saying, Ram tough. Because it's many of the farmers and small businesses in my district that need a Ram Tough vehicle. A Pinto just will not work for the kind of jobs that they're doing. But members, this amendment, and I urge your no vote on this amendment, really comes down to, do you support the fourth branch of a government out of control as it is, or does the legislature matter? Do we have 3 branches of government or 4? A green vote on this amendment, you're standing with the fourth branch of government, made up as it is, out of control as it is, but that's what you're supporting. If you support the civics that you learned in school, likely, there's 3 branches, and we're one of them. That's the legislature. Citizens get to elect their leaders, elect their representatives, elect their senators, and that's the process that these clean car standards should go through, because it brings opinions, diverse thought from every corner of the state. Rural, metro, north, south, east, west. And that's why the legislature is the right place to set these standards, not the fourth branch of government. I urge your no vote.
Members, we're on the A52 amendment. The secretary or roll call has been granted. Seeing no further discussion, the secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 303, please make your way to the chamber to vote. And members in the president's office, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 323, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber to vote. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes no. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres-Ray.
Senator Torres-Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I will now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson B. votes no.
Senator Anderson B. votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes no.
Senator Hall votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes no.
Senator Newman votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes no.
Senator Senjum votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes no.
Senator Rosen votes no.
Mr. President, that completes my list.
Okay. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 30 ayes and 36 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Members, we're back on Senate File 4499, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if Senator Ingebrigtsen would please yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Ingebrigtsen would like to draw your attention to Section 78 of the first engrossment of Senate File 4499, which is starts on page 51 on line 18, and it has to do with the state implementation plan revisions, and it has to do with the Pollution Control Agency's plans with respect to ambient air quality standards in permits. And my question is, the way the language reads, it says that in fact, when reissuing a permit is reissued pretty much automatically if in fact a facility has unmodified emissions. And there's a concern here for when factories and other air polluters have exceeded their standards from time to time or on a regular basis. So could you give us an example of a permit issued, this is the language, permit issued solely to authorize operations to continue at an existing facility with unmodified emission levels? And of course the question also begs, what about those facilities that are asking for a permit for the first time or were flying under the radar? What are we trying to accomplish here by simply issuing unmodified permits at a point of reissuance and not being able to address those exceedances, those pollution standards that may have occurred at those facilities?
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. What it is Minnesota requires different requirements than other states. We're just trying to create the same requirements as other states. That's all that's trying to do.
Further discussion, Senator Dibble.
Well, Mr. President, then Senator Ingebrigtsen, you've significantly overshot the mark because clearly what would occur under this new language is it would require that when we know that air pollution is being caused by a facility, it has exceeded those standards, or those first-time basis, or those that are being brought to light for the first time, these permits can't be adjusted and can't be addressed if there have been violations. So Senator Ingebrigtsen, if Senator Ingebrigtsen would yield.
Senator Ingebrigtsen will continue to yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wouldn't this just force the MPCA to issue orders and penalties after the fact rather than addressing the issue at the point of issuing the permit? There's always these complaints about orders and, going back, and you have the earlier bill that disallows the PCA from enforcing on memos and guidance, et cetera. There has to be a rule, so they're further constrained. Why not just address ambient air quality standards issues at the point of an issuance or reissuance of a permit?
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Well, it's very clear, according to the standard that we're trying to accomplish here, is the Federal Clean Air Act State Implementation Plan. So under the revised plan, the PCA is prohibited from applying a national or state ambient air quality standard in a permit needed. Once again, we're trying to set our own standards, not necessarily always following the federal government, which sometimes can be quite restrictive. I hope that answers your question.
Senator Dibble.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, I'll read the language of your own bill. It says that first of all, that the Pollution Control Agency must seek approval from the EPA for revisions to the state's Federal Clean Air Act. So first of all, we may be asking the PCA to do something that's in violation of the Clean Air Act itself, so that the PCA is prohibited from applying a national or a state ambient air quality standard in a permit issued solely to authorize operations to continue at an existing facility with unmodified emission levels. So, Senator Ingebrigtsen, your answer is the opposite of what this language says. And in fact, we had an issue on the north end of the Mississippi in Minneapolis with Northern Metals, which under this would simply be reissued an ambient air permit, even though they had from time to time violated their standards. Again, this is just another giveaway, Mr. President, Senator Ingebrigtsen, to industries that are just seeking to pollute our air and our water and our soil unscathed. It's changing the rules. Something like this, to the public, this is very dense legal language. It seems quite technical. Who the heck knows what it means until you actually read it. And it says that the PCA is forced to simply reissue a permit and can't apply their standards, either federal or state standards, for ambient air qualities. Mr. President, I would like to offer the A55 amendment.
Senator Dibble offers the A55 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Dibble moves to amend Senate File Number 4499 as follows. Page 51 deletes Section 78. This is the A55 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. The A55 would delete Section 78 that we're discussing at this moment. Again, like the other earlier amendments I offered, it's important for us to protect the public's health and not constrain our own pollution control agency from so doing. I request a yes vote, and I request a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call will be granted. Discussion on the A55 amendment. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just ask for a no vote. Quite the contrary. We're not giving our air quality away. We're not polluting our air quality in Minnesota. In fact, we have one of the most stringent standards. Members, I'd ask for a red vote. And all this talk about the world falling down and extreme I don't know what it is, the extreme folks that think all this pollution is going on and we're letting that happen. I can't imagine anybody standing in this chamber that would allow that to happen to our beautiful state. However, we still have to live here. We have to be able to have commerce here. We have to be able to produce products here. And unless we want to lose all our business to these other states, some of these things have to be adjusted. So I would ask for a red vote.
Members, we're on the A55 amendment. A roll call has been requested. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 303, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in the President's office, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 323, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in room 237, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber to vote. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I will now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson B. votes no.
Senator Anderson B. votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes no.
Senator Hall votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes no.
Senator Newman votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes no.
Senator Senjum votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Rosen votes no.
Senator Rosen votes no. Senator Benson.
Senator Jensen votes no.
Senator Jensen votes no.
Mr. President, that completes my list.
All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 32 ayes and 35 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Members, we're back on the bill. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing further in the way of critique or amendments. I just wanted to comment on the bill. I don't know if others are going to offer amendments or ask more questions, but I'm just going to wrap up my comments here right now. Mr. President, we're in the day before the last day of session. This is an 86-section bill with a bunch of more sections that were brought in by Amendment A16. So it's a lengthy bill, and there are a number of provisions that are either benign or worthy of support, but there are just a lot of little gifts and giveaways and allowances for those who are already so powerful. We just simply do that here, it seems, these days. Those who are already so powerful get more consideration in the policies and the language and the resources that we make decisions on, and those who don't have a voice simply are left out. I think the well issue is a perfect illustration. And so I think it's a shame. I'm grateful that we had everything out here in the open in a form of a public debate and a public discussion, and we're able to illuminate some of the issues that are being dealt with. It's better than what we've done in years past when we get a several hundred-page bill dropped on our desk that has all kinds of provisions that diminish our state's environment, and no one gets to read it, and no one knew anything about it. So we had a public discussion. I appreciate that. Obviously, I think that there are a lot of things that are very, very harmful in this bill. I would encourage a no vote. I do think it's a shame that we are at this point, and I have a document here that analyzes all of the elements in the House side that are rejected by the Senate. Or excuse me, all the elements in the Senate bill that are rejected by the House and provisions that they requested that weren't picked up. And so we're miles apart. So I don't know if the plan is to try to pull together a conference committee and get an agreement and get something back to this to this floor before we adjourn sine die tomorrow night, or if we're just looking at making some statements and seeing if we can't deal with this in special, or if we just don't care about some of these provisions. But clearly, it's been communicated by our partners, both in the executive branch, the governor, and the House, that the provisions that I called attention to are totally unacceptable. So if we're going to stand on ceremony and try to push this bill through, we're going to not get any legislation passed. And I think we're here to do the business of the people, Mr. President. I appreciate Senator Ingebretsen's willingness to respond to my questions. I appreciate the opportunity to provide the analysis and the critique of this bill, and I would encourage a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator Marty?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too urge a no vote. And Senator Ingebretsen, I think that last provision that Senator Dibble tried to strike was important to strike, because under that, I can't picture how, with a water gremlin case that we all, I think that was a unanimous vote to pass that legislation. If they're violating an air quality permit under that, it seems to me that they couldn't do anything to stop it. The PCA would have their hands tied. They wouldn't be able to deal with that. I'll just mention the issues that Senator Dibble raised, because there's so many of them in the bill. But that first section where you require the agency to put into rule any time they want to give a guidance, they'd have pages and pages, thousands of times the rules they have now, because each project sometimes is different, how the rule applies, and somebody wants guidance on how it would affect them. You're tying the agency up in more bureaucracy so you can criticize it for being bureaucratic. And the Clean Cars legislation, the fact we're prohibiting the state agency, the pollution control agency, from putting a cap on overall emissions from automobiles, from moving forward on cleaning up the environment, I think it's a huge step backwards. And there may be some good things in the bill as well, but there are a whole lot of clunkers in there that are going to actually move the state backwards, and I urge people to reject the bill.
See no further discussion, the Secretary will give Senate File 4499 its third reading.
Senate File Number 4499, a bill for an act relating to state government.
Third reading. Members, before I go to the author of the bill, is there any final discussion? Final comments, Senator Ingebretsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to stand here much longer, but I do have to thank the staff and Senator Root and her staff, as well as Dallas Fisher and Will Wagner for the time that they put into this, and also the nonpartisan staff, Ben Stanley, Dan Mueller, and Greg Knopf. And also working with Becca Nash. Becca Nash, the new director of LCCMR, and her staff. They do yeoman's work there, and thank the committee at the legislative committee that I and Tory and Senator Dames and others serve on, and that's the LCCMR. So we put together a very good bill. I would appreciate a green vote. Thank you, members.
Senator Rood.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I, too, want to thank my staff for their work on this bill, and my committee administrator, Matt Elfritz, who is just an amazing young man and so helpful. And I do want to thank Senator Ingebretsen for our work together on this bill. Thank you.
Members, any final comments on the bill? Senator Hurd. Senator Westrom, I have Senator Hurd first, and then Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, thank you, and thank you for a long discussion about this bill. And although our good Senator Ingebretsen put some effort and time to move this bill forward, I think it's not ready. It's not ready, and so I would like to advise that it have more conversation with the House, and so that it's when it gets to the governor's desk, it will be more clean. So that's my statement I want to make here. I appreciate this discussion from my colleague brought by Senator Begum and Senator Dibble and Marty. With just a few hours left of this session, I recommend we send the bill back to its author into a discussion with the House and come back with us with something that we can support. This debate highlight problems with the omnibus bill, and the question on PFAB cleanup brought up some concern too. An area in my district, mainly the Battle Creek area, is identified to have PFAB, and besides that, there are other add-in provisions that need to be properly vetted and discussed. So, Mr. President and members, I urge a red vote on this bill. Thank you.
Members, is there any final discussion on the bill? Senator Westrom. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I had an amendment at the desk, was waiting for my turn. I understand they went to third reading. I would move to reconsider third reading.
Members, Senator Westrom is making a motion to reconsider third reading of Senate File 4499. On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We will take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members in alternate locations.
You said you weren't going to take it out of LCCMR, but you can add it to the bill. Well, absolutely. All right. Roll you over.
Members in the chamber, if you are a yes vote on the motion to reconsider third reading, please stand at your desk. You may be seated. Members, if you're a no vote on the motion, please stand. On a vote of 24 to 15, the motion prevails. So members, we are now on Senate File 4499. Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I know you want to keep moving. I'll try to make this brief. I move the A56 amendment.
Senator Westrom offers the A56 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Westrom moves to amend Senate File number 4499 as follows. Page 50 after line 27 insert. This is the A56 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, members, this amendment has a couple projects similar to what's in the LCCMR bill. Project in western Minnesota and Morris with the University of Minnesota Research and Outreach Center on a pilot project for anhydrous ammonia that would qualify, and they are in the running for a federal U.S. Department of Energy grant on an anhydrous ammonia pilot project. This money would leverage $10 to $15 million of federal money, and they're in the running as one of the top two sites or locations and entities to receive this federal USDA or U.S. Department of Energy grant to have a pilot project, anhydrous ammonia energy storage project. They do a lot of research and renewable energy development out at this site, so it's a very natural and a good fit for this type of fund and this type of money and this type of an investment that we make here in the state. There's also Senator Tomassoni has and others up on the range have a very significant interest in solar manufacturing, the only solar panel manufacturing in the state that we have has expanded, and they're continuing for the need to expand. This would be some matching dollars for them to have that expansion in Mountain Iron. I'll let Senator Tomassoni talk about that project as well. We talked about this in the Finance Committee yesterday. Seems like a fair amount of support for both of these projects. Good projects that we could get moving forward, help them match or move ahead with their pursuit. And members, back to the project in Morris, anhydrous ammonia, think of it as chemical battery storage. It's probably the simplest way to do it, to discuss it or understand it. As we talk about different types of energy, one of the big nuts to crack is efficient energy storage. And anhydrous ammonia is proving to be one of those low-cost, efficient ways to store energy and make electricity later. And so that would be a big, significant project for us to have right here in the state for the entire country. And so, Mr. President, I'd urge your support. I hope members can find the value of both of these projects, and I'll let Senator Tomassoni talk more about the one he's pursuing and those interested in the expansion up on the range.
All right, I have Senator Tomassoni and then Senator Dibble. Senator Tomassoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Westrom. And I rise to support this amendment. The solar manufacturing plant in Mountain Iron is the only solar panel manufacturing plant currently operating in the state of Minnesota. It has the amount of money we're trying to get is $3.8 million, and it will build a storage facility that will increase the production in the plant from 140 watts to 280 watts. Currently, there's employing over 100 people working 3 shifts a day, and this plant is been going really, really well lately. And the reason they need this particular expansion is because they don't have any on-site storage, and the storage that they have is totally inadequate. And members, this is renewable energy, and the account is exactly the right account for it. And so I would appreciate your support. And anytime we get a chance to use a renewable fund for renewable energy, that's exactly what we should do. So thank you very much.
Discussion on the A56 amendment. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions, either for well, I guess I have to pick one, don't I? So, question for Senator Westrom, if Senator Westrom would yield.
Senator Westrom, will you yield for a question? Senator Westrom will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's actually a question that I don't know the answer to. It's not presuming anything. Were either of these proposals heard in Senator Osmic's committee and considered for his renewable development account omnibus package, if you will?
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Dibble, I'm uncertain on the solar panel project. Senator Tomassoni might have the better answer there. With the project in Morris, it was up for a hearing, Senator Dibble. On the Tuesday of the week that the legislature decided to recess on Monday early for the April Easter recess, and our hearing also got canceled, unfortunately, because of the situation we're in.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sorry, Senator Dibble, if you don't mind, we can go to Senator Tomassoni.
Yeah,
he might have
I was going to ask the same question. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator Tomassoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dibble, the answer is the same for the solar panel project. It was up for a hearing also. But, we are doing a real lot of things in this legislature this year that are a little bit different than we've ever done in the past due to COVID-19. And me standing over at this microphone right here and walking in behind Senator Westrom is like one of the strange things we're doing. So for us to think that a couple of projects that are really, really good projects that should qualify for the renewable money did not have a hearing as a result of COVID-19 is not a reason to think that they aren't valid and should not be promoted. And both of them are very, very good projects, and they both would have gotten hearings, and I believe they would have both gone forward had we had the time.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Tomassoni's response presumes my mindset about these projects. I'm just asking for information. Senator Ingebrigtsen felt fairly strongly that Senator Bigham's amendment needed to have gone through a committee process. I have asked Senator Osmic for consideration in his renewable development account omnibus bill, solar on schools. That wasn't included. I respected the decisions and the agreements that were made on that, and I don't have an amendment to add solar on schools to this bill, so I'm just kind of wondering where exactly this amendment comes from and why it's not going through Senator Osmic's process and being included with his RDA bill. So if Senator Osmic would yield, please.
Senator Osmic will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Osmic, has this amendment been drafted with your consent and approval outside of the RDA agreement that you've made with your partners in the other body, and having left out a number of important projects that are very worthy, just like Senator Westrom and Senator Tomassoni case they make? And if so, why didn't you let senators who are on your committee with worthy projects know that they could just simply end run the process and attach projects of their choosing and liking to Senator Ingebrigtsen's bill?
Senator Osmic.
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Dibble. And just for the record, I promised Senator Westrom I wasn't going to say anything, so you have helped me break that. But I will answer the question. I was approached and asked regarding this. I do not have my fingerprints on this. I do not necessarily approve of this. I will say that I have been working with Commissioner Kelly, and we have had some discussions, or I believe there's been some discussions with our counterparts in the other body regarding these two projects. However, they are not currently in the RDA bill that is expected on the floor tomorrow. I don't expect them to be in it unless there is an agreement, because I have, as you know, Senator Dibble, I agreed with my word, and I am not adding, deleting, and changing on the RDA bill anything unless we have agreement from the administration and from the other bodies. So let's just say that Senator Westrom has a very passionate opinion of the situation. I think the two projects are certainly interesting and worthy of consideration, but this does not have my fingerprints on it.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I guess, you know, the understandings and the agreements and the courtesies that we arrive at are rules for some people and not for others. I've been pursuing the Solar on Schools idea for several years now. And Mr. President, Solar on Schools is one of those that has a clear public benefit. The second highest bill that schools pay is their utility bill. The first highest, of course, is teachers and other staff. And if we're able to bring down that utility bill to zero or near zero, they could hire additional counselors and social workers and teachers, and we could bring school class size down. And that particular idea didn't make it into Senator Osmek's RDA bill. And I respected that negotiation and didn't think, oh, I can just end run the process and stick some language into the Ingebrigtsen bill. So members, I'm not going to challenge germaneness. I think this is not germane, but I'm not going to attack it on that basis. And I'm not going to ask for a roll call vote, but I will encourage a no vote because we have agreements that we come to and understandings, and we try to respect those. And when we end run and by hook or by crook jam our things through, then what the heck? We have no rules and we can just do anything we want. I encourage a no vote on the A56.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, these projects, I heard about them for the first time, I think it was yesterday or whenever it was in the Finance Committee, and they came then, and they sound worthy. I mean, I know anhydrous can be a good potential for battery storage. The project on the Iron Range sounds very promising. Senator Dibble, as he points out, had the solar in schools, I think 3-4 years now, and there are lots of good projects there. My concern is, again, this is the trouble when the legislature took over these funds, the Renewable Development Fund, when it took it over to take the politics out of it. I think we basically added politics much more heavily than we had in the past. And again, not able to speak to the benefits of these projects. I just think that Senator Osmek and the House authors put together an agreement with the administration. I think it was a fair agreement. I've been supporting his bill, which is coming up tomorrow. But I really question whether this is the right time or place to be doing this. And I really think that I told Senator Westrom during committee yesterday that I'm open to them taking another look at this, but I haven't heard anything from the House or the administration saying that they support these. And when the administration was weighing projects for the RDA, neither of these proposals made it. Again, I'm not saying their opinion was the right one or not, but I just think we have no way of judging it. Senator Thomasoni and Senator Westrom are very persuasive. I think they could sell just about anything to anyone, but that doesn't mean that these are good projects. Oh, no. And I'm not saying that these are not good projects, too. I'm just saying you're very effective salespeople, and we're not hearing from anybody else. We're not hearing from any of the competing projects. And so I just want to make it clear that this is not the way we should be allocating grants and things like this. So I urge your rejection of this, but again, if they've gotten progress with the House or the administration, then maybe we should reconsider it.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I don't know how much puffery you allow on the floor, but it was getting a little deep there. Thank you, Senator Marty, for your comments. Appreciate your, I don't know if that was a kind scalping or a true compliment, but either way, I understand your point, Senator Marty. Mr. President, Senator Marty, to a couple of his questions. Certainly, we're continuing to work on issues. I think it was Senator Cohen that talked about some issues of concern, Senator Marty and your party yesterday about the process as it gets changed, it's changed. And the governor and the House and the Senate have agreement on other provisions in the bill, and that was one we discussed yesterday. And so sometimes their process is exclusive to any of the rest of us, as you know, and that can go on most every committee. And so we all have election certificates. We all have to find other channels and avenues and bills and ways to advocate for our projects. And so, Senator Marty, I just want to convey that to you as you raise the question about why do this now and where it is in the process, and Senator Dibble, but that's where it was as I gave him answers. So, Mr. President, talked to a few other people. I would certainly like us to consider to keep moving this forward as we consider trying to find pathways, but at the present time, Mr. President, I would withdraw the A56 amendment.
Senator Western withdraws the A56 amendment. Members, any further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will give Senate File 4499 its third reading.
Senate File Number 4499, a bill for an act relating to state government.
Third reading. Members, any final discussion on the bill? Seeing none, we're on final passage of Senate File 4499 as amended. The Secretary will take the roll.
Isn't this weird, running around pushing everybody else's buttons? Oh my God. Oh, look at that. I got a tip. I was attacked.
Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 303, please come down to the chamber to vote. And members in the President's office, please come to the chamber to vote.
Yeah, I do too. And we want to. Look at this guy. He must have had a little sleep last night.
Just a little. Just enough.
What do we have next? I hope you guys can do your bill as fast as me.
Yeah,
You set such a high bar.
You know,
Members in room 323, members in the East Gallery, please come down to the chamber to vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber to vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber to vote.
Take notice. You go green so I can go red. You ready? You go green, I'll go red. You're gonna get to 40? Oh, yeah. Don't worry about that. Yeah, right. Over a barrel's not a fun place. Had to withdraw. But we'll get it again. Bring it again. He forgets that I got a few little resources.
I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report no for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes no. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes no. Senator Kent.
My apologies, I went out of order. I report yes for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes yes. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes no. I'll now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson B. votes yes.
Senator Anderson B. votes yes. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes yes.
Senator Dames votes yes. Senator Benson.
Senator Hall votes yes.
Senator Hall votes yes. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes yes.
Senator Newman votes yes. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes yes.
Senator Senjum votes yes.
And Senator
Senator Benson.
Senator Curran votes yes.
Senator Curran votes yes. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 41 ayes and 26 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, I'm going to go to Senator Benson for some committee announcements, and then we're going to recess. Before I go to her, are there any other announcements? Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we are going to recess until 6 p.m. so that capital investment can meet on the bonding bill, and we will resume bills this evening. The Rules Committee will meet at 3:20. The Capital Investment Committee will meet at 3:30. And with that, members, I move we recess until 6 p.m.
Senator Benson moves that the Senate recess to the call of the President at approximately 6 p.m.
Mr. President.
Senator Benson, do you want to do 6 p.m. or to the call of the President?
Mr. President, I would like to move that we recess to the call of the President approximately 6 p.m.
Senator Benson moves that the Senate recess to the call of the President approximately 6 p.m. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Senate is in recess.